Rosalin was taking her daily stroll along the country road when she heard faint meowing coming from a nearby ditch. Curious, she cautiously approached and peered over the edge, her heart sinking at the sight that greeted her. "Hello, little guys," she said softly as she reached down to try and pet one of the 3 kittens before her. They were scared, but not aggressive, which was a very good thing. They looked dirty but healthy, with their piercing blue eyes looking right up at her. Just as Rosalin wanted to pick one up, something strange happened. Welcome to Wonderbot Animals. One of the kittens began to pant heavily, but Rosalin had no idea why. She knew those kittens had to be taken out of the ditch quickly, so she took off her jacket to wrap them in. She picked up the sick one first, feeling how light and skinny it was. The other 2 followed soon after, but then she spotted something left behind in the ditch. A little note, all crumbled up and dirty, was left behind. Rosalin had already feared someone might have left the kittens behind, but now that she spotted the note, her fears became a reality. She quickly grabbed the note and speed-walked back home without looking at it, carrying the 3 little kittens in her arms. She had to find out what was going on with the sick one. The vet was closed because it was a Sunday, but Rosalin was an experienced foster mother who had already fostered over 10 kittens. At the time, she took the 3 kittens in from the streets. She had 2 other foster kittens already inside her house. Those kittens were healthy, so she kept them separated from the 3 white ones. After placing the 3 white kittens from the streets in a little makeshift living enclosure fitted with a litter box and some toys, Rosalin turned her attention to the little note. As she uncrumbled the paper, her eyes grew wide in shock. Her heart sank as she reached for her phone and called the police as fast as she could. "I will not stop," was written on the crumbled piece of paper, making Rosalin believe someone was purposefully dumping kittens at the side of the road. There was a single red droplet of some sort of liquid on the paper, which looked a lot like blood, but Rosalin didn't even want to begin to think about that. She needed the help of the police. After telling the dispatcher about the kittens she had found, Rosalin was disappointed to hear the dispatcher's condescending tone. "You need the police for 3 stray kittens?" a man said on the other end of the line. Rosalin knew there were more important matters for the police, but since there was a possibility of blood involved, she really did need the police. "Yes, I do," she said in the most confident way possible. The dispatcher told her a police car was on its way to her, but that it could take a little longer, as this was seen as a non-pressing emergency. Rosalin was a little disappointed, but not surprised. Luckily, this gave her some time to check on the sick kitten and give it some medication. Because she had fostered various kittens with various diseases, she had some medication on hand that could help the sick kitten breathe better. She had an inhaler tucked away in a cabinet somewhere. Now, all she had to do was find it. After treating the kitten, it began to look a little better, but the single droplet of blood kept haunting Rosalin's mind. About an hour after she called, Rosalin began to hear police sirens in the distance. She quickly ran to her window and saw a police car driving up to her home. She greeted 2 police officers outside and showed them the kittens in their enclosure. They didn't seem very impressed, so Rosalin showed them the note left by the kitten's side. One of the police officers took the note from Rosalin's hands and looked at it intently. "You found this next to the kittens?" he asked her with furrowed brows. Rosalin nodded, and the 2 police officers looked at each other with a strange look on their faces. "We'll get the red DOD tested. You'll hear from us," they said as they exited her house. It was a bit of an anticlimax, but at least the police were looking into it. The only thing was that Rosalin was not a very patient person. She wanted to help the kittens now and not wait for God knows how long. So, she put on her coat and began to walk around the same road where she had found the kittens. She had to find something else that would make the police's perspective of the case change from not pressing to urgent. She had no idea what she was looking for, but walking around couldn't hurt, she thought. After walking around for a while, she suddenly heard something coming out of a bush close to the road, so she investigated. Rosalin was taken aback when she discovered 4 more kittens nestled in the underbrush, their fur a stark white like the others, but their eyes held a different hue, a soft grey unlike any she'd seen. Their tiny meows tugged at her heartstrings, compelling her into action. The mystery deepened, and she knew she couldn't leave them behind, not when someone was deliberately placing these creatures in danger. With a sense of urgency, Rosalin sprinted back to her house, her mind racing as much as her feet. She rummaged through her garage for an empty cardboard box, one that would serve as a temporary haven for the newfound kittens. Time was of the essence, and with every second, Rosalin felt a growing responsibility for these innocent lives tossed aside by an unknown hand. Returning to the bush with the box in tow, Rosalin carefully placed the kittens inside. As she secured them, her gaze fell upon another crumpled piece of paper. Heart-pounding, she unfolded it, revealing a message as cold and menacing as the first. The writer's intentions remained mysterious, their threats looming like a dark cloud over Rosalin's resolve. Rosalin's mind raced with questions and fears, but amidst the chaos, a plan formed. She scribbled a note of her own, her handwriting shaky but determined. Leaving her number, she begged the mysterious person to contact her. Maybe, just maybe, a conversation could shed light on this all. Her heart clung to the hope of understanding, of stopping this cycle of abandonment. As Rosalin left her note beside the bush, a mix of fear and anticipation settled in her chest. She'd stepped into uncharted territory, reaching out to a shadow that had cast a long, unsettling pall over her life. With the kittens safe at her side and the police informed, all she could do was wait, hope, and care for the innocent lives caught in this all. Rosalin clung to a sliver of hope that her message would bridge the gap between her and the mysterious dumper. Despite the odds, she envisioned a phone call that could end this cycle of abandonment. Her heart ached for a resolution, not just for the kitten's sake, but to understand the reason behind such actions. With every moment that passed, she yearned for the unknown caller to provide answers. Back at her cozy home, Rosalin gently placed the newly found kittens with their counterparts, their soft meows filling the room with life. She couldn't help but smile at their innocent faces, a stark contrast to the darkness of their situation. Stepping back outside, she felt a renewed determination to scour the surroundings, driven by a mixture of worry and hope that there might be more needing her help. As the cool evening air brushed against her face, the shrill ring of her phone cut through the silence. An unknown number flashed on the screen, sending her heart into a flurry of beats. The world seemed to stand still as she debated answering, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. With a trembling hand, she pressed the green button, bracing herself for what was to come. The voice that greeted her was cold, distorted beyond recognition. "I see you. Don't even dare to run to the police," it warned, sending a shiver down Rosalin's spine. The threat hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the gravity of the situation. She stood frozen, the warmth of the day fading into a chilling realization of the danger she faced. Gathering every ounce of courage, Rosalin's voice quivered as she asked, "What do you want?" The silence that followed felt like an eternity, the air thick with tension and fear. She knew she was stepping into dangerous waters, but the need to protect the innocent drove her to confront the shadow lurking in the background, yet nothing could have prepared her for this demand. "No, I won't do that." Rosalin's voice was steady, defying the bizarre request that crackled through the phone. Why would you even ask for such a thing? Her refusal to bring a specific breed of kitten to the stranger was met with silence, a pause that felt like a tightening noose. But she wasn't deterred by it. She wasn't going to negotiate with someone who viewed these innocent lives as mere objects for exchange. "You'll regret that," the voice growled, its patience thinning. "I'll keep leaving them, maybe even do more." The threat hung in the air, ominous and unspoken. Rosalin's grip tightened around the phone, her mind racing. "You wouldn't," she whispered, though deep down, the vivid images of possible harms that could befall the kittens chilled her to the bone. "I'm not playing games," the voice snapped. "Stop asking questions." "Here's an address," he said, rattling off directions Rosalin reluctantly scribbled down. Before she could protest, he added, "Get the police involved, and remember, I know where you live." The line went dead, leaving Rosalin staring at the ominous digits, her heart pounding in her chest. "How can I possibly hand over a kitten to someone like that?" Rosalin muttered to herself, pacing back and forth. The thought of doing as the voice commanded was unbearable, yet the threat to the kittens loomed large, casting a shadow over her resolve. "Is there no other way?" she asked the empty room, hoping for an answer that wouldn't come. "It's settled then," Rosalin finally declared, breaking the silence that had enveloped her home. She picked up her phone, drafting a message to a trusted friend. "I need your help. I have a plan, but can't do it alone. Are you in?" As she hit send, a sense of purpose filled her. She would save these kittens, all of them, from the clutches of this unseen menace. With a deep breath, Rosalin tapped into her vast network of fellow foster parents. It didn't take long to locate the specific breed the mysterious caller demanded. As she arranged for the adoption, she couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clung to her every step. Doing this for the greater good, she reminded herself, trying to stifle the unease that whispered doubts in her mind. No sooner had Rosalin confirmed the adoption than her phone buzzed with a new message, chilling her to the bone. "Good choice." The simple yet ominous words confirmed her fears. She was being watched. Despite the terror that gnawed at her, she refused to let fear dictate her actions. "I have to be smart about this," she thought, steeling herself for what was to come. Under the veil of night, Rosalin crafted an email to her distant cousin Derek, a seasoned police officer. She poured out the details of her predicament, careful to omit any information that could put them both in jeopardy. Her fingers trembled as she hit send, praying her message would be the lifeline she so desperately needed. Derek's response came at the crack of dawn, a beacon of hope in Rosalin's darkest hour. "It's a good thing you reached out," he wrote, outlining a plan that was as daring as it was dangerous. They agreed on a time and place for Rosalin to act as bait, with Derek and his team ready to close in. It was a gamble, but one they were willing to take. Rosalin read Derek's message over and over, committing every detail to memory. The plan was risky, yet it offered a glimmer of hope, not just for the special breed kitten, but for all the kittens that had been discarded. "We can do this," she whispered to the sleeping kittens around her, their innocent faces strengthening her resolve. "We'll put an end to this nightmare." Rosalin knew the importance of catching this individual in the act. It was their only shot. The person was clever, always one step ahead, making it impossible to trace them through conventional means. "We need them to make a mistake," she muttered to herself, feeling the weight of the task at hand. The plan had to work. There was no room for error. As Rosalin drove to the secluded spot, her heart pounded against her chest like a drum. Life had suddenly turned into a high-stakes thriller, with her playing the lead role. She tried to calm her racing thoughts, focusing on the road ahead. Just like in the movies, she thought. But the reality of her situation was far more intimidating than any screenplay. The moment Rosalin stepped out, her phone buzzed with instructions, but she wasn't about to follow them blindly. Typing with determined fingers, she challenged the unknown sender, refusing to leave the kitten alone. "Come and get it yourself if you dare," she texted back, her defiance a small beacon of courage in the enveloping darkness. The response to her demand was a chilling silence. Rosalin gripped the cardboard box tighter, steeling herself for what might come next. She had hoped for bravery, for a face-to-face confrontation, but what awaited her was something far more sinister. The silence was suddenly pierced by the sound of a breaking branch, a prelude to the nightmare that unfolded. Before she could react, darkness enveloped her. A rough hand covered her eyes, while another silenced her attempts to scream. The box slipped from her grasp as she was forcefully guided into another vehicle. Fear coursed through her veins, but her mind raced with thoughts of Derek's plan. This wasn't supposed to happen, she thought, hoping against hope that this twist would still lead to their captor's downfall. In the dark, confined space of the car's back seat, Rosalin's heart skipped beats with every mule of the kitten beside her. Bound and immobilized, panic clawed at her, but the tiny cries also ignited a flicker of determination. "I'm not alone," she reminded herself, trying to draw strength from the presence of the small, frightened creature sharing her ordeal. "I told you not to involve the police," the man's voice cut through the silence, sharp and accusing. "I didn't," Rosalin countered, her voice steadier than she felt. It was a lie, but survival trumped honesty. She needed to buy time, to keep him talking, anything that might give Derek a chance to act. Every second in captivity sharpened Rosalin's focus on survival. Thoughts of Derek, of the plan, of being rescued filled her with desperate hope. "He must have seen," she reassured herself silently. The realization that her car left behind would signal something gone wrong to Derek was a small comfort in the sprawling uncertainty of her situation. Knowing her car was a silent sentinel to her abduction, Rosalin clung to the hope that Derek was already piecing things together. The ticking clock in her mind was loud, each passing moment stretching into eternity. "Please find me," she silently pleaded, aware of the peril she was in, yet trusting in Derek's ability to follow the breadcrumbs she'd left behind. The sudden ring of her cell phone shattered the tense silence. As the man gruffly retrieved it from her pocket, Rosalin's heart leaped. "Why are the police calling you then?" he demanded, skepticism lacing his tone as he tossed the phone back at her. Despite her fear, a spark of defiance lit within Rosalin. This was her moment to think fast and to act even faster. As the kidnapper's attention momentarily shifted, Rosalin seized the chance to sneak a glance at her phone, the screen's light a small beacon of hope beneath the edge of her blindfold. The text from the officer, revealing the supposed threat, was not as dire as she feared, as it said the scary red stuff wasn't blood. Knowing that, she felt a bit braver, like maybe this guy wasn't as big and bad as he wanted her to believe. That little bit of info didn't make her situation any less crazy, but it sure gave her a bit more guts. She wasn't about to start making demands or anything. She knew better than to poke the bear. But inside, she was doing a little victory dance. Every bit of hope counted, and this was her tiny spark in a whole lot of dark. The ride came to an abrupt halt, and next thing Rosalin knew, she was being hauled into a garage that smelled like old tires and forgotten Christmas decorations. Despite the weirdness of it all, something about the place felt painfully average. She didn't dare to say anything yet, saving her breath for when it might actually do some good. As she was nudged along, Rosalin caught glimpses of a super ordinary neighborhood through a tiny gap in her blindfold. It was weirdly comforting and scary at the same time, like she was so close to normal but still caught up in this mess. She made a mental note of everything she saw, hoping it'd help somehow. Once she was shoved into a closet and the door clicked shut, Rosalin decided to take a small chance. "You know the cops are going to find me," she said, trying to sound more sure than she felt. It wasn't a taunt, more like a gentle reminder, or maybe a little bit of both. She waited for a reaction, hoping she'd played her card right. Yet he simply ignored her as he guided her somewhere. Once the door snapped shut, Rosalin didn't waste any time. Twisting her wrists, she felt the ropes give way, a testament to her kidnapper's haste more than her strength. With her hands free, the blindfold was the next to go. Peering through the keyhole, she got a glimpse of the garage, her heart pounding with anticipation and fear of what she saw next. Through the tiny aperture, Rosalin watched as the man carefully lifted the specific kitten from the box. He examined it with an intensity that made Rosalin's skin crawl. Every inch of the kitten was scrutinized, from its tiny ears down to its tail. She couldn't help but wonder what was going through his mind as he held the innocent creature. The next moment took Rosalin by surprise. The man pulled away a large tablecloth, uncovering cages upon cages of kittens. The sight was overwhelming, a sea of eyes in every color staring back at her. It was like he'd hoarded every kitten in the neighborhood, maybe even the town. The variety was astonishing, with some breeds Rosalin had never seen before, adding to the surrealness of the situation. Among the captives were kittens that Rosalin couldn't recognize, their features exotic and unfamiliar. It was a bizarre collection, showcasing the extent of the man's obsession. She wondered how many homes were missing these little souls, how many people were out there searching, just like she had been. That was until she heard a loud noise. The sound of the garage door being forced open shattered the tense silence. Rosalin's heart leaped as officers swarmed in, their commands loud and authoritative. The man was quickly subdued and handcuffed, his reign of kitten napping brought to an abrupt end. Rosalin watched through the keyhole, a wave of relief washing over her. Help had arrived just in the nick of time. "Hey, over here!" Rosalin's voice, though hoarse, carried enough urgency to cut through the chaos. An officer quickly unlocked the closet, freeing her. Stepping out into the light, she blinked away the discomfort, her gaze sweeping across the room until it landed on the familiar faces of the police, her saviors in uniform. Derek was there, right in the thick of it, and seeing him felt like finding an anchor in a stormy sea. Rosalin rushed to him, wrapping her arms tightly around her cousin. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice muffled against his shoulder. It was more than gratitude. It was a relief, a release of all the fear and tension that had built up inside her. Handcuffed and defeated, the man was led away, and Rosalin, now a key witness, accompanied them to the station. Sitting in the sterile brightness of the police office, she recounted her ordeal, the officers hanging on every word. It was surreal, narrating her own kidnapping like it was a plot twist in some drama. In a small interrogation room, the man's motives spilled out. He dreamed of creating a new breed of cat, one so unique it would bring him fame and fortune. The revelation was shocking, yet it painted a clear picture of the desperation and delusion that drove his actions. Rosalin listened, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place, revealing the full scope of the man's madness. The man admitted to discarding the kittens that didn't meet his vision, leaving them as unwanted cast-offs on the roadside. It was a cold, calculated decision, devoid of any compassion for the living beings he treated as mere experiments. Rosalin felt a mix of anger and sadness, thinking about the innocent lives caught in the crossfire of one man's greedy ambition. The man faced the music, locked up and charged with every crime they could pin on him. It was a relief, knowing he wouldn't be out there, threatening the innocent or discarding lives like they meant nothing. Rosalin felt a weight lift off her shoulders, a chapter closing on this crazy part of her life. Every single kitten was scooped up from that house of horrors and spread out to families ready to give them the love they deserved. Rosalin, of course, kept the ones she'd already bonded with, turning her home into a kitten paradise. It felt right, like she was patching up the bits of her heart that the ordeal had torn apart. The word spread, and soon enough, Rosalin was getting all kinds of pats on the back. Hero felt like a heavy title, but if standing up for those little furballs made her one, then she'd wear it with pride. It was nice, the recognition, but knowing those kittens were safe and sound? That was the real prize. With the man behind bars, the roads were quiet, no more sad meows coming from the ditches. It was a victory, not just for Rosalin, but for the whole town. The difference was night and day, and even though the memory of those abandoned kittens lingered, there was comfort in the silence, in the peace that had returned. The best news came when every last one of those sick kittens bounced back, healthier and happier than ever. And one by one, they all found families to call their own. It was like watching a bunch of little success stories walk out the door, each one a testament to the resilience of life and the kindness of strangers. Rosalin couldn't help but smile. This was what hope looked like,